Welcome to The Middlemen. I'm Tom Limongello, and I'm here with Todd. We as middlemen live at the intersection of media and e-commerce, and we would like for you to join us in our discussions where we turn that chaotic intersection into your comfort zone. Okay, let's get into it. The first topic we wanted to tackle from this week was Nike. I think probably half of the internet saw Massimo Junco, former Nike employee, do a seething takedown. He talks about how detrimental the pivot toward Nike.com and toward performance marketing.
Now, to be clear, performance marketing was like item 9 on a 10-item list on his rant. So
that's true.
I think some people, right, in the LinkedIn marketing sphere, definitely some people jumped on the performance marketing discussion. But honestly, reading his piece myself, it was like not his major point of emphasis.
Yeah, that's true. And I think probably the biggest thing was the reorganization. So like my biggest takeaway from it was that you have a situation where Nike, and a lot of the coverage that you saw like Adweek and rebooting, was that Nike is a retailer. And to me, I've always thought of Nike as a brand.
I certainly think of them as a brand.
Yeah. And if you look at their site, it does look like a retailer site. It's very much like you need to filter for what you want. There are crazy designs all over the place, from baggy basketball shorts to very slim types of athletic wear. Getting from place to place it requires you based on their reorg. It's men's, women's, children, and Jordan, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then also, just from my perspective on the brand, I feel like it's lost its focus because like we buy our daughter Jordans, and I don't think I would wear Jordans. I think a lot of the people in the agency world might think I'm silly, but I see it as a kid's brand. I think that this move toward trying to make Nike.com half of their sales might have just exacerbated a lot of the product issues that they were seeing.
Right. So in the piece, that what they talk about is Nike does is it a new CEO or a new president or something comes in and comes up with
in 2017, Donahue or something like that is his name. He came in and did a big reorg.
He does a big reorg, and the reorg fundamentally shifts the business towards what you described in terms of like product lines or men, women, children, Jordan. And they come out with this goal of trying to move 50% of sales to be direct to consumer, right, through Nike.com. What I find fascinating is people say, oh, they're a retailer. Do you call Apple because of the Apple Store a retailer? No, right? Yeah. Nobody does. And it's silly to think of Nike that way. They sell a ton of product, a different variety. And yes, when they're selling through their store or through their storefront online, of course they're going to look like a retailer, and their site should look like a retailer. So I'm amused by your comment. Yeah, they sell products. They're going to look like the best practices of retail online are pretty well established. So they're going to look like every other retail store online. But they did a lot of layoffs around this reorg. So they lost a lot of experienced people, especially on the product design side, supposedly. And by moving to Nike.com and trying to drive sales through that, it meant more performance marketing and direct to consumer marketing, what have you. So to me, the biggest thing they did is this reorg was so risky. Like they fundamentally decided to change their approach. Like they basically, by moving 50% of sales to their own online store or Nike stores, they effectively abandoned a lot of retail. And that's a risky strategy. Like you've been working with these retailers, they were your partners for 50 years, and suddenly you're like, screw you, and kick them to the curb. And I think that underestimates the role of retail in fashion, clothes, put shoes in that clothing bucket. And I think honestly what it did is it opened the door to other new emergents like Hoka.
Yep.
To backfill. So when Nike abandons, the channel still has shelf space. They still got to put shoes in that shelf slot.
Yep.
Got to go to somebody. Nike doesn't want it. Then they'll go to the next person.
Yeah. And there was a friend of mine, founder of Clove, which is a company that started with selling shoes to doctors, waterproof capabilities, things like that. They were starting to see competition from Hoka. And so I started to talk to him and I said, what do you see going on here? And he read the post on LinkedIn. He said, look, I think this is like a cautionary tale. If you think about the math, On Running and Hoka, they sell 2/3 of their product through wholesale. And what that means, because the price is lower, So they're selling, 2/3 of their sales are wholesale. That means 4 out of every 5 pair of shoes is actually sold in person. And so if you use that, like, why did Nike want half to go through e-commerce if all their competitors are selling 4 out of 5 or 80% in stores?
It is. It'll be an interesting case study, right? So it has really nothing to do with a emphasis on performance marketing. When again, you're an online retailer and you're driving traffic to a store, of course that's going to be performance marketing.
Yeah.
And if you're selling in retail in a channel environment, that's where brand dollars show up because you're not driving to a transaction. You're trying to generate awareness. When someone walks in the store, they pick you. And Nike's always been great at branding, right? The Mars Jordan campaigns back in the 80s that launched Air Jordan, or Mars Blackman, that from Spike Lee, that whole thing is great. And Nike hasn't necessarily had those notes more recently. Is it a part of they need better storytelling? Is it a part of, right? But also the thing is performance. You don't have the right product, performance isn't going to work anyway. You have to have things that people want to buy. Driving traffic to a site, you don't have what they want, they're not going to buy. So performance marketing doesn't solve a bad product assortment issue.
It's fun watching a very large
approach,
company
right?
do that.
It's holy crap.
Yeah.
They laid off a bunch of talented people. Man, I'm sure Hoka and other brands picked them up. Holy crap. That's just.
Other than New Coke, have you ever seen a company or brand do
Well,
something
we
at
saw
this
this
scale?
we were talking about this before and mentioning Apple Store.
Yeah.
Ron Johnson goes from Apple running the Apple Store and huge success there, had been a Target previously, and then goes to run JCPenney and tries to fundamentally change their experience from discounts and sales to a low price all the time environment without discounts. And the shoppers who shop at JCPenney didn't care about that, and it hurt sales. And so I think he made a big bet. Ron Johnson made a big bet on, we can do the things the way we did at Target and Apple Store. JCPenney's audience isn't that. And so it failed. And he was fired within, 18 months or something like that, because it was just an abject disaster. So I think it's not quite the level of New Coke, but I think people are going to look back and go, my goodness, what made them think that betting the farm like that would be such a great idea? What data pointed to that decision? And it sounds like it was a bit of a bet on the come, which is, again, when you're a company that size.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they come back because the competition is so much stiffer now. In the running section, you've got Hoka On Running and the Tracksmiths of the world. And the women's side, you've got Lululemon and Athleta. So from all sides, they are seeing real pressure. So what actually gets them back in the game? Do they have to buy somebody? Do they have to? Is it just turning everything back on the wholesale side? Is that enough?
I mean, I think ignoring wholesale or walking away from that looks like a mistake, because it did create air supply for new emergents, again, like Hoka, that just exploded. Now I understand why Hoka exploded. Suddenly they had access to shelf space they could never have had access to before, which to anyone out there in retail media selling shelf space in your JBP, here's your case study that shows how valuable it is, right? There you go. To bring it back to our
applied knowledge. You're talking JBP stuff. I love it.
I'm learning the lingo. And I think and are they going to will they push Hoka and others back out? Will they reclaim that shelf space? I think that's going to be one of the things to watch. And so it's not a performance marketing story. Performance marketing can't sell products that people don't want. To me, it's a channel, it's a product. Like, they need better products, they need the right mix of products, and they have to get back to generating things that people want. And my 2 teenagers and the shoes they want are Hoka, not Nike.
Cool. All right. I guess we can close the door on that one and see how it plays out. Second thing we wanted to talk about this week was some news that you have a unique perspective on, which is Teads and Outbrain merging.
So this is big news. For those not aware, I sold a company to Outbrain and then ran it within Outbrain for 5 years, from 2017 through 2022. So I was an exec in Outbrain. I have no inside information about this deal, but as an outsider, a couple of things. So I'm not sure how aware of what Teads does everyone is. And I think that's important because
I personally was not at all.
And you've got experience in the ad business, so it's surprising. So for those not aware, Teads' closest analogy is Triple Lift. We all remember that Triple Lift content right inside the middle of the article, ad slot. That was Triple Lift pioneered that as a native ad, and then Teads did a lot of that. And so Teads and Triple Lift, like, Taboola is to Outbrain as Triple Lift was to Teads. And so as a result, the other thing about Teads is they're based in France and they're very big internationally. Triple Lift was big in the US. Teads was big elsewhere around the world. That's another thing I don't think people realize about Outbrain is really ex-US. And 80% of their business comes outside the US in the terms of Outbrain. Their biggest office is in Tel Aviv. Second biggest office is in Slovenia, which is based on the company that they had acquired that I ran. And they have sales offices all around the world, and they have a great business outside the US, Outbrain does. And so it's interesting because they have complementary ad products, right? In content versus end of article, brand units versus performance units, the content recommendations in the form of Outbrain. They're compatible in terms of organizations, both largely outside the US. And honestly, I think Outbrain's biggest region is Europe, and so is Teads. So compatible in terms of business, culture-wise, and company, they're both about 1,000 people. And so there's a lot of compatibility between the two businesses. The other thing about Outbrain is the people who bought my company are still there. And the guy who's going to run the post-merger integration for Outbrain, a guy named Asaf, is a pro's pro at running integration. He really knows what he's doing. So I'm really bullish on the deal in terms of putting two complementary ad partners together, compatible markets, compatible teams. In terms of my interactions with Teads staff around the globe, very analogous in terms of team structure and approach and strategy to what Outbrain was. And so I think there's a lot there that those two can do. But the most important thing here is that it's about damn time we're seeing M&A in the open web ad space because scale is so critical. Part of the reason Facebook or Meta and Google get 80% of every new ad dollar is because they have more scale than everybody else. So it's easy to spend money with them. They can deliver any number of results you need. And so we need scale built out to compete with Meta and Google and now Amazon and the retail side. We need more of that scale. So what's interesting is I'm not sure people realize the combined companies are going to do something like 2 or 3 billion in media spend. They're going to do 600 million in XTAC. Okay. Which is net paying out publishers, yeah, right? That's the stat that people use. They'll close in on $1 billion in XTAC. It's going to be a big company.
Yeah, it was the XTAC number. Makes sense. So you're saying this is all about scale. This is not to try to.
It's not about, when I would say it's all about scale, it's all about complementary scale. Like some people write, they're just buying more of the same. I'm like, no, their ad products are different. One's more branding, one's more performance, different slots on the page. You and I were talking, and you brought up.
I guess my question was more of this is not we need to bolster our position against Taboola.
No, and you and I talked about that too as we were prepping for this, which is people compare Taboola and Outbrain all the time, and the reality is this has nothing to do with Taboola. This is about how do you compete better with Meta and Google and Amazon. That's what this is about. And cool. Nothing else matters, right? They're getting 80 to 95% of every new ad dollar. If you want to compete with the big boys, that's got to be your focus. And so that's what I think is what this is about is I have to compete with Meta and Google.
Okay, on to our third topic. This was an interesting one. Adweek reported on a leaked presentation from Walmart Connect, where they now have a couple of new ad units, one of them being their TV wall in stores and then another in-store ad unit at self-checkouts. But the reason it was interesting, and I think why it was leaked rather than just being part of normal business, was that they were focused on non-endemic advertisers. So
we'll show you that slide here, everyone. But I saw that I'm like, who the hell is non-endemic to Walmart? Everybody sells to Walmart. As a non-retail guy, my gut reaction was, isn't that? And you actually had a good kind of take on it.
Yeah, I think the idea is that travel, insurance, finance are industries where they would love to be in front of a consumer who's at a Walmart. And I think that makes a lot of sense. You can imagine on one of these TV walls, a QR code where you could get a travel itinerary, you could learn about switching your bank provider, things like that. But yeah, like those are the easy ideas, but those are services really, not products. So yeah, I think in their slide where they're talking about how you can introduce your product, I doubt there's going to be tons of physical products that are going to be showing up there.
Because you would just be sold in. store, and you'd be endemic then, right? I think what's
Yeah.
interesting here is that we just talked to, right, Zavi from Nelson IQ, and he was talking about how the retailers really want to get non-endemic dollars. Like they're really trying to get the broader marketing budgets, not just the shopper media budget or the JBP budget. And you've also brought up before that one of the things you're really excited about for retail media is in store, right? As a frontier, a new frontier, it's going to be targetable. There's going to be some innovation around placements and what have you. So I think this is an
Yeah,
interesting step.
it gives a better and more measurable home to digital out of home tech that's been around for a while, but that's sometimes hard to measure and it's hard to get exactly what you want. And this is a captive place where these screens and the technology can really shine. And in this case, you've got close to 5,000 stores, 20 screens per store. That's a pretty interesting set of screens to be able to advertise on. So I think that's a great place where the sort of very store focused media can get a lot better. But to that point, how big is it? And does it really? I think we have to go through the numbers, but is that sort of a sprinkling on top in terms of the media budgets that are being spent, or does it actually move the needle?
I think these retailers have to try lots of new products and lots of things. So I like that it's
Yeah.
innovation, and credit to Walmart, right? Costco's announced more in store. Walmart's doing it. That's also a better way they compete against Amazon because Amazon doesn't have the storefronts. They have Whole Foods, but that's small compared to Walmart and others.
Yep.
And so I think that's where this gets really interesting as an area of growth and opportunity. And again, retailers are trying to get beyond that 0.25 or 0.5% of GMV they get stuck at. So they're going to have to come up with new ideas and new products to go do that.
It's also interesting you bring up Amazon because I think Amazon does have some big box stores outside of the Whole Foods footprint, but I think their question is going to be, what the hell do we serve there? Is this going to be a programmatic buy that shows they have so many potential brands? And I think they don't have the same sort of JBP process with these brands in that, okay, here's the 100 brands that we're actually going to do these deals with. So I think that Walmart can probably connect on this and make that happen way faster than Amazon would because Amazon would be like, let's let everybody do it. So it could be a mess.
I think what's also interesting is obviously Walmart has loyalty data, and Walmart has will have online profiles of shopping. So I think it's really an interesting strategy. And again, as you finally pointed out to me, what non-endemic could be and could work there, right? Credit card offers, travel offers, other home services, insurance, et cetera, make a ton of sense and could really open up some pathways to revenue. So I think our conclusion today is, as we look back at Nike, Outbrain, and Walmart, oh boy, Nike's in for a world of pain and turnaround. We're bullish on Outbrain and Teads, and I think we're going to, by the way, and I think this is going to kick off a huge wave of M&A across the open web ad tech ecosystem. We've been waiting for this. For those of us who are deep in the weeds of ad tech, like myself, for a number of years, we've been waiting for this consolidation wave to happen. And so I think we're kicking it off, and this is the type of bigger deals we should see. Does the world really need 3 or 4 brand verification companies? Probably not. Right? I think we're going to see some consolidation, and so I think this is an interesting wave. And then a lot of things we've been talking about in terms of retail media, in terms of innovation and things like in store, and to have this pop up from Walmart speaks to we're bullish on that trend and where that could go. And I think that really speaks to why we're excited about retail media. And it's not about a new format online that's really going to be exciting. It's about how do I extend this ad tech ecosystem into other areas and connecting that online ad tech ecosystem to this offline world or environment. It's pretty interesting. And so
I'm just thinking, actually, to your point on the in-store opportunity, that might be a way to get some of these types of non-endemic advertisers who are not ready to build into programmatic APIs to just try something that's going to be, it might be a little smaller, it might be more manual, but it gets a big bang because it's video and it's not just programmatic ads. So that actually, I think I'm actually learning something from our discussion. It's the name of the game. So cool. Thanks. And we'll see you again next time. I'm talking to the man in the middle. I'm asking them to explain their ways. 'Cause no topic could be made and
And